MIT just reported that 95% of generative AI projects are not providing business value. And working with vendors gives you a success rate of 67%, while building in-house only 1/3. Now, we've talked about this generative AI value gap before, but in this video, I want to directly address how to obtain real value from your AI projects. Now, AI success has two different parts. The first part is finding and picking high-value use cases, so making sure you have good ROI, making sure it's tractable, pieces of that nature. But you see, this is only half the battle. The other half is obviously the execution piece, which is the hardest part. And so today, I'm going to show you the AI lifecycle that I have used across dozens of Fortune 500 companies to ensure that we execute this flawlessly. Now, first is scoping, and this is where we translate the business problem into technical requirements. So think about questions like, what kind of models do you need? Do we customize it or use an off-the-shelf model? And then does a single model address my business needs, or do I need multiple models maybe in a workflow? We need to measure and evaluate performance, technical and organizational feasibility, data availability, security requirements, cost considerations, but the biggest thing that we need to do here is ensure that we identify the risks of the project. So the thing about this phase is that it sets up everything for the rest of your project. Now, when problems arise here, this can lead to delays in the project, it can lead to pissed off stakeholders, but the worst thing that could happen is you find out midway through the project that you can't even solve the problem. So here we need to clearly outline the business goals, technical requirements, but obviously these risks are one of the most important things that we need to do during this phase. Model selection is where we find the model that best fits our functionality and also our performance requirements. So honestly, I'm just going to flash a bunch on screen here, and some of these are pretty simple. For instance, context window, we can just try and get a higher model with a higher context. Some of these are a little more difficult, like latency, but the big thing for this section is to ensure that the model that you're using aligns with the requirements that we've identified during scoping. Now, model customization takes our model and aligns it to the use case itself. And so this is where you find a lot of videos about specific techniques. For instance, prompt engineering. This is where you provide system prompts, patterns, maybe a few shots. You have retrieval augmented generation. This pulls data from various different sources. We have agents and tools. This is typically used for multi-step processes, for instance. But there are a lot of other common techniques that I'm going to flash here that you can align your model to the actual use case itself. Now, all of these techniques, no matter which one you use, share one common goal, and that is to make sure that we adapt the model to your specified domain. But there's one failure mode that I see all the time in this stage, and that is not getting enough user feedback. You should treat this section as a loop itself. You first iterate, then you do performance metrics, and then you validate. Now, I totally get it if you're a vendor and you're actually scared of doing this loop with the customer. You don't want to show them, bad feedback or bad outputs, especially since if you're doing a POC, this could still be a part of your sales cycle. Now, you can do this in a specific way, but if you start getting user feedback extremely early in the process and then show consistent progress over time, then you're actually going to mitigate this risk a little bit. So in working with the customer as well, pair them with visible wins and also align extremely clearly on what the criteria is for pass and fail. So let's say the model is getting good results. Well, now this phase is really focused on turning this model into something actually practical for end users to use. Now, steps are going to vary based on the use case. I'm actually going to throw Databricks architecture on here. So the first couple are sources and ingestion. So we need to identify where the data lives and also how you'll capture it, either in batch, stream, what ETL do you need. Next is storage and data management. Maybe think of an object store, warehouse, lakehouse, and then we need to ensure that data quality is also there as well. Next is data access and governance, obviously permissions, right, security, retention, PII, things of this nature. Next is GenAI Core. We have to think about embeddings, vector databases, serving that model, prompt templates, agents, and tools to ensure that this can actually be sent over to the application. Next, we have the application layer. This could be APIs, webhooks, and you'd also need to have that user interface that is wired into these business workflows. Now, as you can see, in development integration, there are multiple different points of failure just because you're doing so much here. The biggest risks I always see is data access. We need to ensure that we have access to that data and we can ingest it. Now, the deployment phase is when we do a controlled rollout to the end users themselves. And now we have to ensure that we scale it for real world usage. Now, a lot of this stuff is pretty straightforward, like make sure the uptime is good, CI/CD pipelines, things of this nature. But the key thing I do here is before a full production deployment across all users, we should be doing a user acceptance test here. Now, what we want to do here is take a small group in a pre-production environment and then just have them test the application out. So here we can confirm our metrics, we can capture the feedback earlier, we can get those critical bugs as well. But the big thing is that we need to make sure that we validate the business value, especially on these small users. Remember the original problem. Most AI projects are not providing business value. So UAT is a great spot for us to actually validate the business value on a small set of users. Now, after we validate it, we will be able to roll this out to all the other users. And as we do this deployment phase, we should be checking a bunch of different things. See dashboards for quality, latency, errors, costs for tasks as well. And the final phase here is the continuous improvement phase. This is where we monitor the system live, still continue to collect user feedback, and keep shipping iterative changes along the way. Now, if this was a point solution, we could honestly end it at this step here. But if we're thinking about large companies, they operate a lot differently with AI. See, a lot of these companies are trying to transform their whole business, and so one app is just a part of a larger solution of multiple different use cases. So while we keep on improving this one use case, we should also start thinking about the next part of the process, or other high value use cases as well that we should start tackling. See, once we've already shipped this one use case, we can also re-leverage some of these things, for instance, the RAG pipelines or maybe even the model for other use cases to go even faster. And so we think about this whole AI strategy across these large companies, we need to think more as a program rather than an individual project. So now after you've done the improvements for this application, what is the next one that we should focus on next? Now I've gone through the lifecycle, I've given you what you should do for each piece, I've also given you the big risks to watch out for to ensure we provide value, but I want to give you one last piece that has helped me tremendously across the dozens of projects that I've ran. And so here it would really be to focus on business value every single step of the way. Now hold on, this does sound stupid. You're right. Obviously you should focus on high priority tasks. What I mean by this is when we have to ship this out quickly, we should really only focus on the bare bone important pieces. I see so many teams focused on, hey, how do we make the optimized piece here or that piece there, and you can just get into so many different rabbit holes. And the worst thing you can do is have your teams focus on one problem when they should really be focusing on other high value pieces. So the overarching thing is, if the task doesn't provide value, then don't do it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.